Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Newmount. We are coming to you from the beautiful county of Yorkshire, England. This contest has been titled The Battle of the Species, and our contestants come here today with unblemished records. In the red corner, trained by former middleweight bare-knuckle boxing champion, is the challenger. He weighed in today at 1 pound, 3 ounces, standing 9 inches tall with a wingspan reach of 18 inches. He has a record of 10 contests, 10 wins, and no defeats. He races today out of the village of Hemsworth and is known as Swift Nick. And in the blue corner, trained by his owner, who is simply known as the Dog Man, is the defending champion. He weighed in today at exactly 34 pounds. He stands 22 inches tall with a stride covering 55 inches. He comes with an impressive record of 15 contests, 15 wins, and no losses. He races today out of the town of Rotherham and is known as Quicksilver! Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to battle!
My name's Dave Sleight. I'm a former showman, and when I worked as a travelling showman, I had a speciality act where a greyhound raced against a pigeon. And the pigeon that we used was a racing miler, which is a short distance racing pigeon, unlike a homer, which flies a long distance. These birds, as the name suggests, are trained to fly a straight mile, very fast speed. Having trained various animals, I knew that the way to do it was through time and patience. So what I'm going to do in this series of films is to show you exactly how I trained a miler pigeon to race against a greyhound. This time it will be racing against a racing whippet. So it's going to be a race over 100 metres, greyhound versus pigeon. It's never been done by anyone else before me, and I believe it's never been done by anyone since me, so it's totally unique. But I'll show you step by step how we achieved it. So how it works is basically you get a pair of pigeons. It's the male miler, the cock miler that does the racing. You can pair him to any hen pigeon, but once he's paired to her for life. Until that hen either goes missing or dies, he won't pair to anything else. He's just devoted to that hen pigeon. Miler pigeons particularly so. So once you've got the birds paired, what you do when you're going to a show to race, you would split him up from the hen. So it's called a widowhood system. So we split up from the hen for maybe 48 hours. Then you turn up on the showground, and we have to have a cage inside the transit van on the side wall. And what we did, we used to open the side door, get the bird, and we would fly him back to the transit van, and he'd go, having seen the end that it's paired with, he'd go straight up onto her box and he'd be spinning on her, wanting to get back in with her. So now we was primed for the race. So when we got onto the show field, the arena where we're doing the demonstration itself, we bring the racing lure across, which the dog chased, and I'd hold the dog and my wife would hold the bird, or vice versa, And when the lure started, we'd release the pair together. So the dog was chasing the lure, but the pigeon was racing to get back to his hen, who we knew was in the van, who we hadn't seen. He'd only had a brief look at over a couple of days, and he was keen to get back to her before she paired with anything else. So that's how it works. And then obviously when he returned, you let him in with her, and he was happy to get back in there. And then he got into the routine of doing that week after week after week. And we took that demonstration from the furthest north we went was Orkney, and the furthest south we went was Guernsey. So, you know, we travelled the full length and breadth of England doing it. And it did get onto television. It got, we did a man from William Hill's, Bookmakers, he was at a show that we did, and he said, would it be possible to get that to happen on a greyhound track? I said, well, as long as it's a long straight, we can do it over a straight race. I don't think I can get the pigeon to fly the full circular track, but I can definitely get him to race down the home straight. He said, well, we have an 120 yards dash at Wimbledon, straight run. And so we did that, and it was taken up by Sky Sports, and it went all over the world. And we were getting phone calls from Canada, Australia, Japan, all sorts of places they'd seen this thing on Sky, this pigeon and this greyhound racing, and no one had ever seen it before, you know. So this is a baby miler. It's known as a squeaker. When he first hatched, he got no feathers at all. He was a tiny little pink thing known as a squab. When he gets to this stage of his development, he becomes a squeaker. You can see, if you look closely, you see the little bits of yellow down on his head. Shows he's still a baby. If you look at his beak looks quite unusual. And the reason for that is because that unusually large beak at a stage of his age allows him to gape wide enough for his parents to get their beak inside and feed him on regurgitated corn. So what I do now at this stage, I also start to substitute his feed by feeding him myself, and I use an eyedropper or a syringe and gradually dribble what is parrot rearing mixture into his crop, which is basically the same. It's finely ground corns and wheats. And by doing that, this bird begins to recognise me as one of his parents. So he gained like an extra parent. But what I have to be careful of is every time you handle the bird, every time you feed the bird, dress in the same coloured clothing so he becomes to recognise you. And over a period of time, he will start to respond to me to be fed, because he sees me as one of his parents approaching him. So he'll lead him to this squeak, which he does to be fed. Well, Dave Sleight here again. This time I want to show you the dog that hopefully will be racing the miler pigeon in the not too distant future. This dog is a little bitch called Lucy, and she's what's known in Yorkshire as a rag whippet. Now, the reason they're called rag whippets is because in the early days, the miners of this area and the surrounding areas used to race these dogs on a Sunday morning on what was known as a tape track. So that was a straight track. It was laned off by ribbons. One man slipped, the other man waved a flapping rag, hence the name rag whippets. And it was the first dog to cross the winning line running to the flapping rag. So that's where the name came from. But obviously, as time went on and racing developed, and they started developing greyhound tracks and racing lures and all this kind of thing, so then they started to chase and race the dogs after a drag lure or on a greyhound track. But these are bred specifically for the job of racing. They're not a pedigree whippet. They look fairly similar, but there's several differences. In one is, unlike the pedigree whippet, these dogs have more of a straighter, longer back. They have the straighter stifle. They're basically a greyhound in miniature. And her job is simple. Is all she does, she runs as fast as she can in pursuit of a drag lure, which is just basically a piece of rag tied onto the end of a line. And I would expect her top speed to be something in the region 35 to 40 mile per hour. And she will hit that top speed within 2 or 3 strides are the starting traps. So they're very, very, very quick into the top speed. They were bred by crossbreeding pedigree whippets with greyhounds and various terrier blood. One of the terriers that was used was a red Staffordshire Bull Terrier, and this particular bitch would run back to that bloodline. And I've owned a couple in the past from the same bloodline, which came in this lovely red fawn colour, and that's where it comes from. Although to look at, you wouldn't guess there was that. So, but that dates back to like the 1950s, 60s, and 70s when they were using crossing breeding with small greyhounds. Again, all just to for speed. But they were very, very, very popular. All the miners in this area would turn out on a Sunday morning to race whippets. Right, well, we've moved on a few weeks, and since we last filmed, and this is the young bird now. He's looking a bit more pigeon-like. As you can see, his beak looks far more normal. He's just coming to the stage where he's getting his adult plumage, and now his next thing is to be paired up with a female. He needs to get a strong bond with his female pigeon, and once he forms that bond, then we'll begin his training. But this is the stage he's at now, so he's all ready to go. He's got a nice, good set of wing feathers there. Everything's in place. So he's all ready to begin his training. Your training begins in very short flights, starting from a couple of feet and gradually moving back and moving back. And what you're doing, you're training the bird the route. You're training the bird the shortest route. Remember, this is a racing miler. So the bird needs to take the shortest, straightest route to the finish. So that's what you're hoping to achieve. So the next thing we had to teach him is that the dog was not going to be any threat, because again, he would see the dog as a predator, as he would see a fox as a predator. So what I did is, we've got some puppies here about 12 weeks old, so I'll take the puppies down the lane with him, and then on the return walk, I would allow the bird to fly over the top of the puppies and straight on. So he came to think then that the puppies paid him no attention, so therefore any dog that he sees is going to pay him no attention. So that built his confidence, because as you'll see in the race, there's a time when the two are literally neck and neck. The pigeon is in grabbing distance of the dog if the dog was so inclined. But obviously the dog is trained to chase a lure. The pigeon is simply racing back to the female, as I explained earlier. These birds bond for life, and they've got a very good sense of recognition. They can, if you were to take the female pigeon that is paired with this miler and drop her in the middle of Trafalgar Square and release him from your hand, he would drop right beside the female that he's paired to. That's how good his sense of recognition is. So that's how the two, they've both got the motives. One's chasing an artificial lure, the other one is flying back to his partner, who he pairs to for life. When pigeons pair, they pair for life. Until one dies, they will remain as a pair. So it's a very strong bond between the two, and that's the motivation for the pigeon to race. So basically, that's how the whole thing works. Unfortunately, this morning, I gave him his final training flight in anticipation of you turning up. And he come down the lane beautifully, about a metre off the ground, good speed, landed right on top of this perch here, sat there waiting for me to come up. And as I walked back up the lane to collect him, a sparrowhawk came over the top of the edge there. Well, pigeons instantly recognise the danger of the shape of a bird of prey, and the minute he saw that, he struck up into the air. The sparrowhawk turned and followed him for a while, but he's far too fast to be caught on the flight. Even a peregrine will struggle from, unless it did a stoop. These birds can wind assisted in 70 miles per hour, so I wasn't too concerned about that. But he's only a very young bird. He's never been further than flying the length of this lane to the female. But with being panicked, he went up. He went round a couple of times, and then I lost sight of him. So unfortunately, at this moment in time, he's not here, but we are hoping that he will find his way back, and when he does, he should recognise the place where he's been kept. There's a big blue board painted at the front of it, especially to attract him. Pigeons are very good at recognising colours, and they have a very good homing instinct. So I'm hoping if he's not been taken by a bird of prey, I'm hoping in the next 24 hours he's likely to turn up again. So fingers crossed we'll have him back. But it's just one of those unfortunate things in nature that can happen, and it's predator and prey. So, you know, when he's hungry enough and when he's got over the fear of the attack, he should come back. But we'll just only have to wait and see, Phil. We can't do any more than that at the minute. You may remember the last time we filmed, we had a bit of a disappointing morning because the bird was spooked in his training by a sparrowhawk which came overhead, and for a while we thought he might have gone. He was missing for the best part of 2 days, but on the second day when I came down to check, he was back in the box with his female. So all's well that ends well, no injuries. When I spoke to the man who bred him, he said there's no way any bird of prey will catch him on the wing. He'd be too fast. But the danger is if he roosts up, and because he's a young bird, he could be taken by surprise. But he said on the wing he'd be safe enough. So that gave me a little bit of confidence. So fortunately, he must have avoided the hawk pretty well. And here he is to tell the tale. So all's well that ends well. All miler pigeons, like racing dogs, have a race name. This bird was bred by a man called Eric Pickersgill, who's known in the dog racing and pigeon racing world as Planty. That's his nickname. And when he bred this bird for me, he passed it on to me and said he should be very, very fast. A few days ago he rang me and he said, how is he doing? I said, he's training very well. He says, what's his speed like? I said, it's brilliant. He said, well, he should be, because the father to him is my champion miler bird, Turpin. He said, what do you call him? I said, well, I haven't thought of a name yet, but something's just crossed my mind. So after the conversation, I started to think about it, and I remembered seeing a documentary on television, which was to do with one of these psychic investigators, and he did a 2 or 3 hour program. This is maybe it's a few years ago, but I watched it all the way through, and my missus at the time said, what are you doing watching that rubbish? But there was a motive, because this man was trying to contact Dick Turpin, the highwayman, and to do that he travelled to Hounslow Heath, where Turpin was reputed to have robbed stagecoaches in the time of his doings as an highwayman. Well, when he took the investigation to this place, it was night time, and suddenly the psychic investigator said, there's a spirit now who wants to speak to me, but this is not Turpin. This is Tom King. This is Turpin's partner who robbed stagecoaches with him. And what Tom King has got to say is, Turpin is no hero. Turpin is a coward. When we were sprung by the Bow Street runners, I stood and fought my ground. Turpin ran, but he killed me as he left to prevent me giving his name in. Turpin is not the hero that he's portrayed in the songs and the books. He's not an hero. Turpin is a coward. And then the spirit left him. And this is what the man said. So now he moves his investigation to York. Now, if you've heard the stories of Dick Turpin, you'll know that he's reputed to have rode, after this incident, he's reputed to have rode overnight from London to York. Killing his horse in doing so, died from exhaustion just short of York gates. But Turpin approached the gates deliberately and let the gateman get in conversation with him. This would be his alibi if he was charged with connection to either the robbery that was taking place or the death of Tom King. But when this team travelled to York, again, this psychic investigator was contacted by a spirit. And this spirit told him Turpin didn't do the ride. Turpin stole that story. The people who wrote about Turpin stole the story from me. I did the ride. I did the ride from London to York. That was me, not Turpin. I'm more famous than Turpin. I was a more successful highwayman than Turpin. Turpin was a blackguard and a thief. He preyed on the vulnerable. I was a true highwayman. I stole from wealthy people. But the story should have been dedicated to me. The songs and the books should be about me. He asked the man's name. The man said, I'm the proper highwayman. I'm Swift Nick. So, in my mind, when it goes back to this, I'm thinking his father's Turpin, and this man wants to be more famous than Turpin. This pigeon will also become more famous than his father Turpin. He will go worldwide. Everyone will see him. The only pigeon in the world to race against a racing dog. This is Swift Nick. That is his name.